Hey, let's talk about Return of the Jedi and why it's the best. Choosing your favorite Star Wars movie is like choosing your magic wand at Ollivander's. You know, it's a beautiful, personal process that doesn't really have to make sense. You love what you love, and it's great. I think there's too much in the Star Wars arena of like picking apart different stuff, talking about why you hate this movie or that movie or whatever. I'm here to spread the love. And in my opinion, Return of the Jedi is the best one, or at least my personal favorite. And I've been noticing a lot lately in the great Star Wars conversation that Return of the Jedi seems to be getting crapped on a little bit. There's a lot of characterization of it as being the one that they kind of phoned in and made all these safe commercial choices for, and didn't really take any artistic risks. And I think that's insane. The Return of the Jedi is bursting with iconic new characters, expertly executed themes and character arcs, and just this incredibly emotionally satisfying conclusion that manages to feel epic and sprawling and also like simultaneously intensely personal and focused. I think it's one of the greatest conclusions to any trilogy ever made. So that's what this video is going to be, just a semi-coherent rant about all the things I love about Return of the Jedi. Before I talk too much about what I love, I should at least admit some of its shortcomings, because it does have a few. From a cinematography perspective, there's really no getting around the fact that it's the weakest in the trilogy. Probably why film purists especially tend to thumb their nose at this movie. But there's a lot of good stuff in it too that doesn't get talked about very much. The visual storytelling shines the brightest when it's allowed to emphasize one single character. Luke is given this ominous, larger-than-life introduction that kind of reminds me of Darth Vader's introduction in A New Hope, where he's just towering over everyone, and it kind of suggests that all this power that he now has, it might not be such a good thing. And it also makes him look like a badass. This excellent shot of the Emperor laughing with Luke and Vader's blades clashing right in front of his face. Even this cool tracking shot of Admiral What's-His-Name walking down the row of other officers, giving us a sense of how disposable he is. This great tracking shot of Luke wailing on Vader. The high-speed kineticism of the Death Star attack and the speeder bike chase. But that being said, a lot of the camera work ranges from elegant simplicity to stilted flatness. There's a lot of choices that feel very rigid and practical. And it's not just that the camera doesn't move. There's plenty of great movies that don't move the camera very much, including A New Hope. It's just it's the frame composition. There's plenty of moments with some really awkward blocking that can't help but translate into awkward acting.
That's one.
General, count me in.
It really feels like in some scenes the most direction that the actors got were you stand here, and action. Plot-wise, the reveal that Leia is Luke's sister is some pretty slapshod storytelling. I don't believe for a second that Lucas actually planned that from the beginning, obviously. I mean, even John Williams thought that Luke was going to wind up with Leia, which is why their theme music is clearly a love theme. It's one of the weirdest resolutions to a love triangle that anybody has ever tried to come up with. Like, oh, sorry, you didn't get a girlfriend, but you do get a sister. While we're on the subject of Leia, it kind of sucks that in all three movies, she never really gets anything resembling a character arc or inner conflict, unless you count choosing Han in Empire Strikes Back. But, she's really the same person at the end of Return of the Jedi that she was at the beginning of A New Hope. And it sucks, too, that got repeated in the Disney Star Wars trilogy. I mean, I guess maybe 9 was supposed to be her big moment, but anyway, The end of Empire Strikes Back really presented a unique storytelling challenge for George Lucas and Lawrence Kasdan. The Return of the Jedi was supposed to be the big final conclusion of the Rebels versus the Empire, but oh wait, first they gotta go get Han Solo, who's stuck in a place that has absolutely nothing to do with that conflict. So the whole reason that Han ever got frozen in the first place was because they didn't think they'd be able to get Harrison Ford to come back, because he was only contracted to do 2 movies, and especially after the success of Raiders of the Lost Ark, he had a lot of options at that time. But uh-oh, they did get him back, so now what are they gonna do? It's funny to me how this movie's often criticized as playing it safe when its story structure is so unconventional. Like, this movie is 2 movies in one. The first act is its own self-contained story that, it's just completely episodic, but at the same time, it kind of primes us for what's to come. It shows us how the relationship between all of these friends has grown to the point where they're all now important to each other than the war itself, which I think is a pretty powerful statement right off the bat. And we get to see how they've grown, and also it sets up these themes of cooperation and trust that get explored later on in the movie. I'm going to ask kind of a big question here. What is Star Wars about? There's probably a lot of answers to that question, but I specifically want to look at how Luke's story begins and how it ends. Star Wars is about friendship. The first act of this movie teaches us a lot about how deeply that friendship has matured. Everyone is constantly bickering and frustrating each other throughout A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back, but now they're moving in perfect unison without saying a word, speaking only in quiet glances and nods. They trust each other so much. Without any expositional dialogue, we see how Luke's powers have grown and that everyone now looks to him as a leader. Leia has put the rebellion on hold to go after someone she loves. Lando has redeemed himself and is now completely trusted. Everyone is introduced one by one, and when they're alone against Jabba, they all fail. It's only when everyone's working together, all at once, that they win the day. I love that Return of the Jedi spends so much time reinvesting us in that friendship. Vader may be Luke's father, but this first act reminds us who his real family is. And the way they collaborate with each other here is a nice reminder or echo of how they're going to rely on each other in the finale. Wait a minute, if Lando was already undercover, why didn't he just break Han out by himself? How did Luke know that they were going to be executed in the Sarlacc pit? What if something else had been... You know what? Calm down. Star Wars is full of set pieces where characters are just barging in to insanely dangerous situations with next to no plan. I'm gonna sneak through the Death Star without a disguise. Hope nobody notices me. I'm gonna single-handedly rescue my friends from Darth Vader and probably a huge army with nothing but a lightsaber and a few days of training. I sure hope Vader wants to fight me one-on-one. What? No. How?
Together again, huh?
Wouldn't miss it.
How we doing?
Same as always.
That bad, huh?
And can we talk about the actual character of this place? Jabba's palace crams more personality into 36 minutes than most movies manage in 2 hours. The Max Rebo Band, Bib Fortuna, Salacious Crumb, the Sarlacc Pit, the frickin' Rancor, the Rancor's Beastmaster, the Gamorrean Guards. Everything in this castle is an extension of Jabba's power and influence, and they all combine to make him seem unstoppable. He's a really unique Star Wars villain because in Star Wars, evil is usually portrayed as these self-important, angry loners, but a lot of times evil is a party. I love that Jabba's strength isn't defined by his physical strength, but by what he's able to buy. He's just this big, fat who gets fatter by profiting off of other people's suffering. And if you've got a problem with that, anybody in this room will be happy to kill you because he pays them to. It's a nice reminder that greed can be every bit as dangerous as hate. So if it isn't impressive enough that this movie's already created an instantly iconic bad guy just in the first act of the movie, next we get the Emperor himself. In just a little over 6 minutes of screen time, Emperor Shiv Palpatine casts such a deep shadow on the franchise that 10 movies and 36 years later, his laugh is still appearing in Star Wars teasers. This isn't just because he's some scary old wrinkly guy who shoots lightning bolts. It's the inner conflict that he provokes and exploits within Luke and Darth Vader with such comfortable ease. We never really see Snoke have to improvise to get what he wants. He easily gets whatever he's after instantly, usually by brute force more than intellect. Instead of manipulating Rey into telling him where Old Man Luke is, he uses the Force to make her tell him. But with Emperor Palpatine, he spends nearly the entire movie going through a whole gamut of tactics over what feels like a much longer period of time in the pursuit of a single objective. And because of that, we get a much clearer picture of what kind of guy he is when the pressure's on. It's like he can taste the deliciousness of every chess move. He makes falling to the dark side feel like the easiest, most natural thing in the world. Even though he spends most of his time in that chair, his patience is this very active presence. He doesn't want to strong-arm Luke into anything. He wants him to make a decision based on his own genuine emotions. And he's willing to wait for those emotions to bubble up. I love that he seems to have this perfect sense of when to chime in and when to shut up. He knows the right moment to taunt him or tempt him, and when to sit back and give him a moment to quietly watch his friends being slaughtered or to let Vader play bad cop for a while. And even more chilling, the Emperor is right about Luke. He is impulsive and he is impatient. He does think that he can just barge in and swing his lightsaber around until all the problems are dead. The Emperor correctly assumes that Luke would happily murder him in his chair in cold blood to save his friends. And then before Luke can have even half a second to process that truth, he has to start fighting for his life against his own father, who he thought he was there to save. As far as he knows, all his friends are dying, and his father is threatening to put his sister through the same hell that he's going through. Who wouldn't snap under these circumstances? This is such a brilliantly executed idea of what the Sith version of Dagobah should be. You know, there's no quiet reflection or peace. There's only constant aggression and action until you're pushed past your breaking point. Unlike Yoda's teachings, Palpatine isn't there to challenge him to try harder. He's giving him permission to let go. And the kicker is, when Luke finally sinks into his rage, it legitimately does make him more powerful. He's only able to beat Vader when he gives into the dark side. I think it's pretty ingenious that after 3 movies of build-up, Luke is finally kicking Vader's ass, but the movie presents this victory as a defeat. Darth Vader is introduced in Episode 6 as we have always known him, towering over an army of terrified flunkies. But the next time we see him, he's bowing right beside all the other disposable minions. I love this little moment of nervousness from Vader here when the Emperor reveals that he knows Vader is still looking for Luke.
And now I sense you wish to continue your search for young Skywalker.
Yes, my master.
Vader's mask up to this point has been the symbol of ruthless conviction, but Return of the Jedi is constantly projecting inner conflict onto its inflexible surface. He seems very trapped. I love this scene. which kind of plays out like the reverse of Vader's pitch in Empire, where Luke wants Vader to join him in the light. It has the line that perfectly sums up the tragedy of Darth Vader's existence.
You don't know the power of the dark side. I must obey my master.
And then when Luke gets taken away, there's that long, lingering shot of him standing by himself, looking quietly into the darkness. This is really the only movie that suggests that being Darth Vader isn't very much fun. Yeah, sure, he has all this power, but his entire life is about doing the bidding of a man who will gladly kill him as soon as he's no longer useful. I mean, all it takes is one failure for him to wind up like all those officers that he himself has disposed of. When he's fighting Luke in the throne room, there's this palpable sense that they're both being manipulated and tested. And when the great Darth Vader is finally unmasked, we see that after all that lifetime of power, fear, and respect, at the end of the day, he's still just a guy. This scene always makes me think about how meaningless his entire life has been up to this point. All that time chasing power, and the only worthwhile moment he ever had was when he became helpless. It's a great example of what Yoda means in Empire when he says the dark side isn't stronger than the light.
Shut up, the Ewoks are cool. Like, okay, I get it. I get that a lot of fans weren't expecting the Ewoks, but you know what? Neither was the Emperor. I love the idea that the only thing that this all-knowing imperialist dictator didn't foresee was the possibility that the natives of one of his conquered worlds might ever pose a credible threat to him. I understand their cuteness might annoy some people, but to me it also helps me understand, why the Emperor never really took them too seriously. They're the ultimate realization of the series' running theme of superior technology being defeated by the scrappy underdog. And I don't know, I just think they're funny. I really do think they're pretty awesome all the way through. I don't know, maybe this is just subjective and it shouldn't be the hill that I'm here to die on, but okay, that's what I think about Ewoks. This ending is one of the most thrilling, perfectly edited battle finales I've ever seen. I mean, the pacing is so well done. Splitting your finale into 3 different conflicts, yeah, it can feel epic, but it can also really dilute the tension, especially if there's one aspect of it that you don't really care as much about. But in Return of the Jedi, each conflict feels equally important, and the editors have this great sense of knowing exactly when to cut away from one scene just right as the tension's really hitting its boiling point. So it just takes that momentum and shoves it right into the next scene. It's so invigorating. And I think it's really interesting too how this is technically supposed to be an attack, but everybody's on the defensive almost the entire time.
I know people like to say, oh great, another Death Star, but the narrow forward momentum and focus of the first Death Star assault in A New Hope is totally different from this fight, where the entire fleet is caught between 2 superior forces, desperately stalling for time and hoping against hope that Han and Leia are going to be able to get the shield generator down. Some people say that the Endor fight is silly, I guess because the Ewoks are in it, and there are moments of levity there, but I think these scenes are so tense because I can't stop imagining what every wasted moment is costing up above. The stakes couldn't be higher. Everything feels so impossible. And I love that the only reason they win is because they're willing to trust Han and Leia with their lives to get the job done. For a franchise that played such a huge part in laying the foundations of the big budget blockbuster, which tend to be about action heroes kicking ass, it's interesting that the Star Wars trilogy really isn't about the power of the individual. Most of the time the heroes are running away, and it's only by working together are they ever able to actually attack the bad guys. And these themes of trust and collaboration are represented not just in the final battle, but also in the character arcs of Han and Luke. Han's story begins as a loner. First, he's only in it for the money, but every time he's about to leave, his devotion to his friends keeps him around. He saves Luke twice, and then spends all of Empire Strikes Back trying to save Leia. So I love how this movie starts with them saving him. And even when he wakes up, he's blind. So the most stubborn loner of the group has to completely rely on everyone else. The rebellion's insanely dangerous plan to attack the second Death Star sounds exactly like the kind of thing Han would normally bail on, but he actually volunteers to lead the strike team for the most dangerous and crucial part. He's not just a lone scoundrel anymore. He's General Solo. The rebellion's pretty short-staffed, so I guess you can climb through the ranks pretty quick. Luke's famous moment of learning to trust the Force in A New Hope is only possible because of the sacrifices of other X-Wing pilots, Han's last-minute appearance, and Obi-Wan's guidance. Luke wants to be a superhero type, and at the beginning of Return of the Jedi, he seems to have achieved that. Luke is a badass in Jabba's palace, but he's also arrogant and aggressive.
I'm taking Captain Solo and his friends. You can either profit by this, or be destroyed. It's your choice, but I warn you not to underestimate my power.
He's gotten more powerful, but he still hasn't changed.
That's the last mistake you'll ever make.
I love Yoda's reaction to this declaration.
Then I am a Jedi.
In Return of the Jedi, Luke has to be willing to leave the galaxy saving to his friends. And finally defeating Darth Vader is his lowest point in the trilogy. He doesn't become a Jedi until he throws away his power to trust in the Force and in his father's willingness to sacrifice his own power. Forget saving the galaxy, he can't even save himself. I love that he defeats the Emperor with vulnerability. For all his divine foresight, he's completely blind to the depths of what people are willing to sacrifice for each other, even damaged people. It is hands down the best demonstration in the entire franchise of what a Jedi should be. There's just so much good stuff in this movie. I mean, it's just packed with all these amazing details. I'm just gonna list as much as I can think of. Here we go. The speeder bikes. This great little moment of 3PO telling the story of the entire saga thus far. This sad little moment of the Beastmaster crying over the dead Rancor. This even sadder moment of the dead Ewok. Oh, why, God, why? I love that Han lets Lando drive the Millennium Falcon. But what an awesome conclusion to a very complicated relationship.
I'll take good care of her. She won't get a scratch.
Lando's co-pilot, numbed. I'm sorry guys, I don't know how to say it, but I just appreciate his good attitude. By the way, he appears in the new movies as well. Did you know that? It's a friggin' trap!
It's a trap!
Even beyond that one moment, Admiral Akbar is such a huge new character. As epic and sprawling as the second Death Star battle feels, as far as his dialogue goes, the scene plays out like a two-person scene between Lando and Akbar. It's pretty amazing. With just these two, we get a sense of the full scale of being in the thick of battle and the stress of orchestrating the whole thing from afar. Everything in Jabba's palace, just all of it. I also love that in a place that's defined by gluttony and excess, that they're not sentenced to death, they're sentenced to be slowly and painfully digested. That cool little callback to Empire Strikes Back where Han says, "I love you," and Leia goes, "I know."
I love you.
I know.
Even C-3PO gets his own little comedic character arc where the most cowardly character becomes a literal god. Oh, what? A green lightsaber? Guys, you do not know how big of a deal that was for me when I saw it for the first time. I don't know if it means anything, but I do know that it's awesome. This sequence where the rebellion is making their final preparations to go into hyperspace for the assault. It is so tense. For all they know, they are launching themselves to their deaths, and they are going for it. This awesome kill from Han Solo. I'm just gonna say it. ATSTs are cooler than AT-ATs. They're more versatile, they have more personality. Don't at me. Don't at me. I love all the Imperials running for their lives in the background, completely ignoring Luke and dying Vader. Luke's private little funeral for Vader. It also kind of feels to me like he's burning away the darkness within himself, you know? It's this kind of cathartic moment, but it's also really sad. It's great. When I was a little kid, I guess I hadn't heard of cremation before yet, and so I asked my cousin, well, why is he burning him? Why doesn't he bury him? And my cousin said, well, this takes place in a long time ago, so they hadn't invented shovels yet. And I believed him. He's a doctor now. Drums made out of dead stormtroopers' helmets. That's not cute. That's pretty savage. Akbar's quiet little moment after the Super Star Destroyer blows up. He somehow looks really tense and really relieved at the same time. That little, oh, I'm alright, bro, when Han and Chewie reunite. It's pretty great.
Alright, pal.
Luke's last little moment of seeing Obi-Wan, Yoda, and his father smiling at a true Jedi. It's all so good! Return of the Jedi is like the Millennium Falcon.
She may not look like much, but she's got it where it counts, kid.
When tasked with ending one of the most popular franchises of all time, they absolutely nailed it. I strongly believe that if Return of the Jedi hadn't been so exceptional, the franchise would not have endured for as long as it has. The end.
Hey, thanks for watching this janky ass video. Just wanted to pump out some Star Wars positivity ahead of the new movie real quick. So I hope y'all got a kick out of it and maybe learned a little bit about Return of the Jedi or just heard some takes you didn't think about before. And I hope you hit that subscribe button and comment in the comment place. Love to hear from you. All right. See you next time.